So hello everyone, welcome to this UK Data Service webinar on census and population studies. Thank you all for signing up to take part today, and we really hope that you'll find it interesting. So my name's Eve Little and I work as part of the impact team, which I'll discuss in a little bit of detail later. I'm also joined by Placide and Ola, who I will let briefly introduce themselves before going over some technical housekeeping.
My name is Placide Abasabanye, and I'm a research associate. I'm a member of the training and user support team in the UK Data Service.
I am Olajuwon Yakub. I'm a data and platform engineer within the UK Data Service. Thank you.
So today, me, Ola, and Placide will be covering an in-depth overview of the census so you can understand what the census is, why it matters, and how it supports research and decision making. We'll be covering census aggregate data, where you will learn to access and work with census aggregate data through the UK Data Service platform Data Explorer. We'll be looking at census bulk data, where you'll learn how to access and work with census bulk data via CCAN. And then towards the end of today's session, we'll go through what the UK Data Service is and how you can utilise our resources, training and opportunities to support with your data work. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the chat and we'll be going through them at the end of today's webinar. So before getting started with the learning side of the webinar, oh no. Well, apologies, everyone. You might have all seen the answer there. But if you go over to the Menti, the next question should be up there now. Apologies if you saw the answer there, but let us know what you think the answer to it is to in the 2021 census, which musical and fandom religions appeared in the detailed classification? Yeah. So I'll give you a few minutes to put that in. It looks like everyone's got the answer right, and I'm really sorry about that. But the answer is B, heavy metals and Jedi Knights. So to give you a kind of bit of background on that, according to the 2011 census, there were actually 176,632 people who were identified as following the Jedi religion. This is an example of aggregate data, which Placide will be talking about in more detail shortly. It is information about the characteristics of a group of people at geographic level. 2001 was the first time that religious belief had been included in the census since 1851. And then fast forwarding to the most recent census, there were fewer than 1,600 Jedi Knight believers recorded. So I'm now going to hand over to Placide, who will be discussing the census in more detail.
Thank you very much, Eve. I'm going to share my screen and all right. So aggregate data, and as my colleague has already mentioned, we will mainly be talking about census aggregate data. Now, how do we define aggregate data? Very simply, when we are talking about aggregate data, we are talking about the data that describes groups of people, and this comes in opposition to just individuals, which comes under microdata or individual data. One thing that is really important here is the aggregation, and this is the principle on which aggregate data relies. We never look at individuals as such. What we are looking at is populations, and you have a support for that. We are looking at neighborhoods. We are looking at age groups, ethnic groups, and so on. So just Bear with me. What this allows us to do is mainly to take a step back and ask questions like, what does this community look like? How is it changing? How does it compare to other communities? One key thing that we need always to keep in mind when dealing with aggregate data is that it really protects confidentiality. When we are working with census data, we never identify individuals. What we are mainly looking to get are patterns, differences. We are looking for similarities, and it's these patterns that will help us make sense of society. Now, here I have an illustration of what aggregate data does. Now, you imagine the different households we can see in the background as dots on a map. If you just consider the individual households or individuals, depending on the data you have, it will be close to what in statistics we call a noise. But once we aggregate these dots, say by household structure, number of children, if we aggregate individuals by age, sex, or religion, as my colleague just talked about, suddenly we see the picture change. We can identify clusters like what we see on this illustration. We can see patterns, we can see vulnerable areas, we can identify maybe areas that are thriving or need support, and so on. So this is why aggregate data is really powerful. It turns millions of individual stories into a coherent image that policymakers and researchers can use in their analysis. Now, let's say a few words about the census, especially in the UK. Some of you must be or might be familiar to this already, but if that's not the case, bear in mind that in the UK, census take place every 10 years. The most recent one took place in 2021, 2022, which is a bit special because normally you have just 1 year. I will develop on this later on. The very first census took place in 1801, but we consider the 1841 census to be the first modern census, which included people's name, age, and lots of other individual information. Now, you also need to bear in mind that individual responses obtained from censuses are locked away for 100 years. That is, they are sealed from the public to protect personal privacy. So, what we get immediately after each census is aggregate statistics, and this is what we are talking about today. So, as a UK data service, we have fully digitized census data from 1971 all the way to the most recent census, 2021, 2022. We are still digitizing the 1961, so it's ongoing, but already you can understand that we have over 50 years of continuous and comparable census data, which is really an extraordinary resource for anyone working with social data. Now, there is a question there. Last ever census, if you followed the news around the 2021 census, there was this question. And for those who might remember, the same was said about the 2011 census. Is this the last ever census? And this is because there was a lot of discussion about replacing traditional censuses with administrative data and population registers. Now, as of today, 2025, the replacement is not happening. Our census agencies are preparing to run the 2031 census in the traditional way. Census really remain absolutely essential. Now, administrative data has improved and it does support more regular population updates, but it hasn't replaced the depth and the standardization of national census. So, where we're going to at the moment is towards some sort of a hybrid system where administrative data comes as a complement to support census data instead of replacing it. Now, you since I started talking, I've been talking about the UK census, but is there such a thing as the UK census? I would say really not. And this is because we have three separate censuses in England and Wales, in Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And even if you like, we can talk about three and a half, because England and Wales run together, uh, but we have some Wales specific content. So all this is due to the fact that we have different governments and with different priorities. We have a few different questions. We have different outputs. We have different geographies. I will come back on this later. You remember, for example, that in 2021, the most recent census, Scotland decided to delay their census to 2022. And this was because of COVID concerns, for those who remember. Now, this created a 1 year gap for some data like flow data, migration, travel to work patterns, and all of that. Harmonizing it took some time and careful work across 2023 and 2024. This is all done now. We fully have a full 2021-2022 UK wide picture, and the fact that Scotland delayed their census in 2022 gives the name of the census 2021-2022 instead of just 2021, as this would have been the case for the rest of the censuses. Now, let's say a word about the output. Every time there is a new census, we get four main output released. Now, on this slide, you can see five. The very last one, person level data, is made available, as I've said, 100 years after the census to protect privacy. So what we get, I would say immediately, is the four first: aggregate data, boundary data, microdata, and origin and destination data, or flow data. Now, I will not say much about this. I will not go in details about all these outputs. We hold separate workshops and webinars to provide in-depth information on each one of these. We also provide additional information on our website. You can see on the top right of my slide, on our website in the Learning Hub pages, we have additional information. So if you would like to know more about any of these, you can head to our website. Maybe I can just show you what to do quickly. So all you will need to do is, if you just type UKDS in your browser, and so UK Data Service homepage, and you open it. You go to the Learning Hub, and in the Learning Hub, you scroll down. Now, there is rich information. Hey, my colleague Eve will come back on this later on, but you scroll down towards the census pages. If you open it, you will see a lot of information about the census 2021, different information about data releases in the three different countries. And all this is very interesting and in-depth information. Here you have links towards platforms where you can go and download the data. And if you keep going, you have a section where we provide additional information on what is and how to obtain. So, what is census aggregate data and obtaining census aggregate data? That's what we start with. Then, what is census boundary data? Obtaining census boundary data. If you keep going, you will see what is census flow data and obtaining census flow data. The same is done for census micro data. So all this is very useful information that will help you know more about all this census output. And towards the end of our presentation, our colleague Eve will come back on additional supports, especially through our help desk support. So you can get to know more. But today we are mainly talking about census aggregate data. Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the most recent census, the 2021-2022 census, and maybe have a close look at individual nations. Again, we can't cover everything about it, but as an overview, the census for England and Wales took place on the 21st of March 2021. It achieved 97% response rate, which is exceptional, by the way, because most of it was run online, and this was the first time it was done this way. So, achieving 97% response rate was a huge success. Then there was a coverage survey, quality survey. There was also an extensive set of consultations with academics, local authorities, charities, community groups. As of now, all outputs have been released. So we have all the multivariate type tables. There is a flexible table builder. Maybe many of you have probably used it already. In Northern Ireland, the census was run on the same day, so 21st of March 2021. The NISRA, the Northern Ireland Census Agency, applied strong disclosure control techniques, which is very important in a society where community identity is politically sensitive. They have already released their full dataset between 2022 and 2024. So it's all now fully integrated into the UK-wide harmonized releases. Scotland, as I've mentioned it already, there was a delay. The census took place in March 2022, 1 year later. Now, at first, they had a lower initial response rate. Then they extended the collection period, ran an enormous publicity campaign, and with all of this done, they reached about 90%, so 89.9%, which was an acceptable response rate. Throughout 2023, 2024, and 2025, Scotland released their first output, then multiple other output, including flexible table builder. They released two versions of their flexible table builder in 2024, and mid 2025, the origin and destination data. By the way, this origin and destination data, the flow data, are always the last product of census to be released. Okay, so what can the census aggregate data tell us? What do we learn from this? I would say almost everything you would want to know about population at a local level. So this will help you to analyze or to study how many people live somewhere, their occupations, qualifications, economic status, ethnicity, religion. It can help you to analyze housing conditions, overcrowding, family structures, household compositions, long-term health conditions, caring responsibilities, commuting patterns, migration flows, and so on. So no other data set really covers the whole population in this level of details. This is why the census is considered to be the anchor of all population statistics in the UK. Now, in 2021-2022 census, a few new questions were introduced. The first one I'm talking about here is a voluntary question on gender identity. It was asked in all four nations, and this was the first time we had this type of data on gender identity at small area level. You might have followed this in news, but there was an issue in England and Wales coding on this variable, gender identity. The issue is being fixed, but the data is available. So if at all you want to use this data, please be mindful of this coding issue until it gets fully fixed. Another question is a voluntary question on sexual orientation. Previously, sexual orientation was only measured in surveys. So, and because of that, it meant smaller sample sizes and big confidence intervals when running statistics. So the census provided here, for the first time, a detailed local level picture of different sexual orientation communities across the UK, and that has been hugely valuable for equality monitoring and service planning. There is another question on veteran status. This question was asked in England and Wales and Scotland. It allowed public bodies to identify and support veteran communities more effectively. Now, Northern Ireland chose not to include this question due to the historical and political context that you know. There was another question added by Scotland and Northern Ireland on long-term health conditions, and Scotland even allowed free text descriptions. So this free text element really has opened up reach new possibilities for health research, especially in understanding how people describe chronic conditions in their own words. So now that's what the census can tell us, but is there anything the census cannot tell us? Yes, there is. It does not collect income or wealth information. So if you need information about income and wealth, you will have to look at other sources like the Family Resource Survey, the Labor Force Survey. You might have to look at tax data and all of that. The census does not let us identify any individuals, never, never, because of confidentiality, as we said previously. So statistical disclosure control methods like record swapping, small cell suppression, and controlled noise are used. And this is to prevent identification, especially when we are dealing with small populations. Also, deprivation indicators must be derived from census variables and not directly collected. Right. So I will wrap up my presentation here by talking a little bit about geography. Now, the title of this slide says it all, the tricky issue of census geography. Now, what is the issue here? In census, the fundamental building block of census geography is what we call the output area, OA. Output areas are statistical geographies grouping socially similar households, but they don't match any non-geographies. So they are just designed following strict thresholds. We have a minimum of 40 households and a maximum of 250 households for an output area. There are also thresholds applied to individuals. We can check that later. Then these output area are aggregated into lower layer super output areas and middle layer output super output areas. In Scotland, we have what we call data zones and intermediate geographies. Northern Ireland uses its own version of lower layer super output areas. So, as I've said before, none of these areas, geographies, match the everyday geography people recognize. So, we don't think really about geography in terms of middle layer super output areas. We don't think about it in terms of data zones. So we have a translation problem in census. Most people, when you think about geography, you're just thinking about regions, counties, local authorities, councils, wards, postcodes, and all of that. In England, we also have also England and Wales, both. We have the upper tier and lower tier local authorities, which are laid on top of one another, really well nested. So also, the census does not use postcode geography. So, to bridge the gap, we rely on tools like GeoConvert, and my colleague Ola will come back on this tool and explain how you can use it. And this helps to turn postcode into census geographies and census geographies into administrative geographies and so on, which is absolutely essential if you are trying to combine census data, say, with survey data or any other type of data like administrative record. So I will hand over to my colleague Ola, who will continue to develop and say more about GeoConvert and about the tools we make available for you to download the data. Thank you for following.
All right. Thank you very much, Eve and Placid, for the great presentation so far. Good morning once again, everyone. Now, we'll move into the practical session where we would explore how to access the census aggregate data my colleagues have already introduced to us so far. As mentioned earlier, all of our census aggregate data is delivered online through two main platforms, the Data Explorer and CCAN. We will start with a brief introduction to the platforms before heading into the practical session where we will do a follow through. Now, what is Data Explorer? Data Explorer is a powerful tool developed collaboratively by several international statistical organizations, including the OECD, UNESCO, the National Bank of Belgium, Statistic Estonia, Statistic New Zealand, the Turkish Statistical Institute, and other global organizations, including the UK Data Service. It is designed not only to store data, but also to create, manage, and disseminate it effectively. Through the Data Explorer, we make available a wide range of global data sets, including those from major bodies such as the OECD, the World Bank, and the IMF. As the name suggests, its key purpose is to help users easily explore and interact with the data. And all the data are freely available to all users. Now, we would be exploring the platform itself using the population density data. I'll be moving over to my browser now to show us a quick demo of how to explore and how to use the platform for our use. Now, I would suggest that we follow through as I'm going through the platform. You could go to your browser now and follow through as I will be showing you how to use the platform itself. So I'll be moving over to my browser now. Now, how do we access the platform to get the data that we need? I have two different methods I'll be showing us this morning to help us easily get to the platform. So the first method is using by type on Google UK Data Service Data Explorer. And yes, it directly takes us to the platform. This is the front page. But if you're like me, I may not remember Data Explorer, but I would remember UK Data Service. I could just type UK Data Service without the Data Explorer, and good. It would take us directly to your home page of UK Data Service, where we could do find data. That is what we are trying to achieve. We are trying to find data and browse and access data. If you're having issues at this point, kindly let us know. So you could use your search bar to search the data you need if you have an idea of what you're looking for. In this case, we want to work with the census. You could come down to the options below, census. Once you click on census, and we also have Data Explorer. Once I click on it, it takes us to the same home page as before. As you can see, the same home page. So that is the different method I would suggest that we can access the platform. Either if you remember the full name, UK Data Service Data Explorer, or if you don't remember Data Explorer but you remember UK Data Service, just type it. You would also access it on the main page. So that is the two ways you could access it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we will be exploring the platform using the population density data. And as I mentioned earlier, we have other data set on the platform, but for now our focus is the census data, which we would look into. And I did mention here that we currently we have the 1971 and 2021 census data on the platform for now. Others will be added later on. So let's go back to our main focus for today now. So population density. Now, how do we get it? In this instance, I know what I'm looking for. So all I could just type population density, spelling error, density. And yes, we have our population density. Very easy to use. I'll go back to the main page again. Other ways we could also explore it, we have census topics. In this instance, we could find it based on topics. Population density is under demography. If you know it, that's fine. You could just go to demography in this instance. And now, if you notice, we have both 1971 and 2021 data set in this instance. But for this case, our goal is 2021. We are not focusing on 1971. So to make it easier for us, we could just filter out the 1971 by selecting 2021, and all 1971 data is out. And what do? We just look for the population density we want, which we also have here, population density. And the third way, I'll go back to the home page again. We could come to directly, instead of using the topics, we could come directly to census 2021 data, click on it, then demography. Then we don't need to filter again. All we need to do is search for the data we need. In this instance, population density. If you don't have an idea of what you're looking for, you could just explore the data. You will definitely find it. But I believe everyone if you are working on a project, you know what you're looking for. So it's easier that way. So now our focus in this instance is population density. If we have any issues at this point, I would wait so we could drop any issues. Yes. Somebody asked, is only England and Wales in there? Yes, it's only England and Wales in there for now. As you can see, England and Wales, that's what we have there for now. If you want to get the other countries, we would still explore the other platform, which is SICAN. We will talk about that after this particular platform. But for this platform, we have England and Wales there. So let's go to population density. Now, before you click on it, you could look at the data overview to check if this is what you need. If this is the data you want, after reading the overview, just click on it. And there's also the download option. If you need all the data, you could directly download, but it's preferable you click on the data first to see what it look like before you download the data. So this is the overview of the data you want to download. We have the filter options by the side. We have other options in the center. So now before we go into the filter, let's explore what all of these functionalities are. Now, as you can see, we have a total of 8,576 data points, and we have the year already. Now, the overview gives us information about the data generally, about the data, and as you can see, bulk download platform, which we would explore in a few minutes time. Now, the bulk download is if you are looking for a lower level data, a more granular level data, you could go to the download platform, which we would explore as I mentioned. Now, we also have the DOI. DOI helps with the citation of the data. Let me click on it and let's see what's there. So generally, if you're working with the data, you need to cite it. This is where you come to get your citation. Now, let's go back to our main page. We also have dimensions involved. For example, for this particular data, the dimensions involved are the usual resident population and units. If you need the definition for all of this for your work, you could click on it, definition. It takes you directly to the definition of that particular unit. Now let's go back to our page again, and these are just other informations about the data, last updated number of unfiltered data points. So this is just the overview. So now the table, let's go to the table page. Let's see what it looks like. Now, this is what the table looks like. So this is our data. All right, this is our data now. We will come back to that question, Amaz. We'll come back to that question. So this is our data now, the population density data. As you can see, this is what it looks like. So now let's play around it. Now we will leave the chart for now. Let's go to labels. We'll come back to the chart later. Let's go to labels. Now, as you can see, we have 2021 census population density data. Now let's click on labels. So we have currently the name is selected, population density, and we also have identifier, and we also have, you could also select both. So now currently, as I said, the name is selected. Let's click on the identifier. And let's see the difference. This is the difference. The identifier just gives us the code. As you can see, no name of the place, just the code. But it is not useful for us. The code alone is not useful for us if we don't know the name of what we are working with. So I would suggest that we use both name and code, and I'll tell you why in a minute. All right. So this is now when once we have both the population, we have the population density data we are in with both name and identifier, both name and identifier. So why do I mention that it is better we use both name and identifier? Now, instances where we have Camden in London, assuming we have different cities, for example, London, Northampton, Manchester. For example, if you have Camden in Manchester and we also have Camden in London, this code helps to differentiate between the two Camdens. But if you are working with just Camden and London alone, it's okay to use just the names without the code. But if you are working across different cities and you have the same names, it is preferable to have both the code and the name for easy identification. So basically, that is what the label does. Now, if you want to go further ahead, if you don't like the view of what you have, I can see some of the questions. We would answer the questions later on. So I want to do an overview of the platform, then we come back to the questions so we don't waste too much time answering the questions. So if you have any issues at this point before I proceed, kindly let me know in the chat also. Thank you very much for following through. So now let's go to the layout and see what it does. So if you don't like the view of what you have currently, you could move things around. Let's see what difference it makes for us. As you can see, it changes the view. Now we have England and Wales. We have England alone, Wales alone. So that is the view. So if you don't like the view you can still move things around. Just go back to the original view. So you can play around all of these till you get what you want. That is what the layout option does. I believe that is clear and easy to follow. Now, we also have the download options. If you want to download your data, you can come to download. So we have three options. Table in Excel. If you want your table downloaded in Excel format, you could click on this, then your table is downloaded in Excel format. Now, if you want your data downloaded in CSV, we have two options now, filter data and unfiltered data. If you look at this currently, we have 8,576 data points. We will still come back to filter option. So assuming you filtered your data and you have 100 data points. So it is that 100 data point that is filtered that will be downloaded. But if you click on filter data points, you have the entire 8,000 plus data downloaded. So that's the difference between filtered and unfiltered data set. So once you go to the filter, it will only download the filtered data options. We also have the developer API. This is more for the technically savvy people. If you need to connect to a database directly instead of having to download data individually, or you need to connect to a visualization tool like Power BI, you could use the developer API to achieve that. We will not go into details about that. If you have more questions, you could ask after the session and we can put you through. Now, let's go back to full screen. What does this does? It gives you a bigger view of the data, as you can see. That is what that does. Now, let's go back to the main page. We've been able to cover some of these functionalities. Now, let's go to filter options. So now let's go to the first filter. Obviously, we have only one census, which is 2021, and we can't have more than that. So we only have one options to select from. So if you have multiple options, they would definitely come up if there are multiple options there. Now, then the other filter is the top geography level. Now, as we said earlier, we have England and Wales in the data. So for this instance, let's go for England. Let's select England alone. Now, once that's selected, let's go for the geographical grouping. Then personally, I prefer to collapse all first, then expand one by one. It makes it easier to explore personally for me. If you want to do that, that's fine. Now, as you break it down, you see more options. We have regions, Westminster Parliamentary. You could go for more options, counties, unitary authorities. So in this instance, we could go for London boroughs, counties, and unitary authorities. Let's select that. Now you could go even more to a granular level. As I said earlier, I prefer to collapse or then expand little by little for to make it easier. So I could go in depth. As you can see, if I want to go in depth, then I could select Darlington County, Durham, but I don't want to do that. But I'm just showing you for you to see. You could even go even lower than that. As you can see, more options to select from, more options to select from. But I think I'm okay with the selection I have currently. But I'm showing you this to see you could filter down as much as you want. Now let's apply our filter. All right, as you can see, we have the filter data. Remember we had 8,000 plus data earlier. Once we did the filtering, now we have 116 data points. That is what the filter does. So once you click on download filter data, then you only have 116 data points that will be downloaded. That is what that does. And if you select unfiltered, all the 8,000 data is downloaded. So now let's look at what the chart option does. Column, as you can see, it gives you a quick overview of how your data looks like in visualization format. That is what the chart option does. It's also, as you can see, it has customization. You could customize it further on. For example, you could select particular places. Let's just select any random place. Now let's see what that does. As you can see now, it highlights it with color. So it makes it easy to identify. As you can see, others are of the same color, but these are of different colors. So basically that is what how you can explore the data explorer, how you can use it to get your data, download data, and even do some quick visualization to see how your data looks like. And yeah, that will be the end. That will be the end here for Data Explorer. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat, as I mentioned, or if you have issues navigating the platform, you can also drop it here. You can also drop it in the chat. We would gladly help. So if you don't have any issues, I'll move forward next to the bulk data platform, which is called CCAN. So now, before we go back to that, we've been able to cover activity one, which is exploring population density and the data explorer interface. Now let's go to the next part, which is the CCAN, where we have, which stand for, well, you don't need to remember the full definition anyway. CCAN is all right, which stand for Comprehensive Knowledge Archive Network, and it is designed for storing very large volumes of data and making them easily available. So it has more lower level data compared to Data Explorer that we just looked at. So if you want more granular level data, more lower level data, it is CCAN you go to. And if on CCAN, we currently provide the 2021, 2011 census data and historical data for 1971, 1981, and 1991. These earlier data are actually provided in zip files, which meaning you would need to download all of the data. So that only applies to 1971, 1981, and 1991. So going on to the next slide now. Now we'll be exploring two activities in this particular platform. One, I'll be doing it to show you how the platform works. The second, you'll be doing it yourself and giving me the responses to the questions. So now let's go back to activity 2.1. Now let's go to activity 2. Now we would explore the platform by using the age of arrival in the UK table for England and Wales. We would download the data, find how many people were born in England, how many people arrived in Wales aged 20 to 24, and what unit was used for it. So now I will head over to my browser now and let's explore CCAN. Now, the same way we explored data, we went through Data Explorer, the same method, we could say UK Data Service, then find data, browse and access data, the same thing, census, then we have SICAN. Easy. Or if you actually remember SICAN, you could just click UK Data Service. I've already typed it here, SICAN, UK Data Service SICAN. Once you click on that, the same page as the other one, as you can see, the same page. So that is the two ways you can also access SICAN for your bulk data download. So now this is the interface for SICAN. Now, how do we also access data on this platform? Easy peasy also. You could, in this instance, as I said, we'll be looking at age of arrival in the UK to for our exploration. So now we could type age of arrival in the UK, age of arrival in the UK. Let's search. Now we have eight nine data sets. We have England and Wales. Our goal is England and Wales census 2021 age of arrival in the UK. And this is the data just by using the search button. And the other way we could do it, aside, I'll go back to the main page again, is just go to data set itself. Instead of searching, you will go to data sets itself, then also your search age of arrival in the UK. And we'll have our results. Age of arrival in the UK census 2021. Now we have other filter. This is also filter options by the side, by the left side. As you can see, you could break it down by age, household, adult, but we won't do all of this now. We could select different format you want. Is it CSV? Is it JSON? Is it PDF? If it is available, you will get it. You also have the year 2021, 2022, 91, 81. Also, the other filter options, topics, units, area type. Do you want output areas, regions, countries? Based on what you want, you get it. But we don't need that now, but you could explore that while you are going through the platform. If you have any questions or having issues accessing the platform, you could drop it in the chat. We would also look into it. Now let's go to our focus, which is age of arrival in the UK. Okay, I guess the platform is, let's reload it. Okay, good. Now, the first page gives us the about the information about the data sets. As you can see, this data sets provides census 2021 estimate that classify usual resident in England and Wales by age of arrival in the UK. So all of these are information about the data set. You can read through everything that we have here. And now the data and resources. As we mentioned earlier, if you want more granular level data, it is SICAN you come to. As you can see, the data is broken down by geographical levels, country level, region level, NHS, local health board. So depending on the geographical area you are focusing on, you could download the data that you need. Below is also more additional informations you could get about the data, like the referencing DI we mentioned, citation, and every other information that is needed for the data set. Now, our goal for this particular question is age of arrival in the UK and how many people were born in England. So let's go for country level data in this instance because that is our goal. Now, if you need to access the data, you could click on Explore. Sorry, on the Explore, let's click on OK. That functionality is not working. I don't know why, but once I click on the data, it should take us to the data set itself. I guess that would be looking. So once you click on the data set itself, now you would have more additional information. Then you can download the data here, or you could also download the data using this button here. So both downloads the data for us. So that is how you get access to data on SICAN. Now, as you can see, we have other options by the left that is still breaking down the data into different geographical level data. So now let's look at our downloads and let's answer the questions we have. Now, our questions say the questions we have says how many people were born in England. Now, let's go to that question. Our focus is England. born in England. As you can see, this particular rows give us the answer born in the UK, which is 466,000, 46,687,506 people were born in England. That answers our question. So this is the answer to the first question. And how many people arrived in Wales age 20 to 24? Our focus there is Wales ages 20 to 24. Now ages 20 to 24. So we have ages 20 to 24. How many people arrived in the UK? We have 37,167 people arrived in the UK. So that is how we're able to, that's how you explore, seek, and download data. So the first page generally gives us the data, while the second page gives us information about the data, which is the metadata. So now there was a question that says what unit are used. So unit of measure for this particular data is person. As you can see, unit of measure is person. So we've been able to go through the platform. A minute. So we've been able to go through SICAN to understand how it works, how to download different data set from there. So I would go back to sharing my screen now, and we can answer the next questions ourselves. I'll give you 5 minutes to go through the question, activity 2.1. I'll give you 5 minutes to do that, and you can drop your answer in the chat once you have your answer. So the time start now. So this is 11 o'clock. So I'll give you, okay, let's do 3 minutes. 3 minutes is okay. I believe 3 minutes should be okay to get it. So by 11:03, I would show us the answer to that, to the activity 2.1. So I go to the SICAM platform, find the national identity data for Northern Ireland, then answer the questions. How many people identify themselves as Northern Irish only in Fermanagh and Omagh, and what geographic referencing system was used? A quick tip, you will find the last question on the metadata sheet in the data you download. This will be found in the metadata sheet. All right, let's answer the question. I think that is enough time, so I'll just escape, and now let's answer the question. Our goal is the national identity for Northern Ireland, which is, as you can see, the first one we have here. Then we could go to national for 2021. Okay, this is what we want to use. National Island Census 2021, MSB 15. Let's click on that. I've shown you how to exploit it already, so we don't need to go into details. As you can see, Northern Ireland data only have two levels, so it's kind of different from England and Wales. So we only have two levels for Northern Ireland. So let's explore the data, then go to resource, download the resource, and let's answer the question. Now, as you can see, Northern Ireland also has their metadata in the first page. They have the metadata in the first page, like unlike England and Wales, which had it is in the second page. So let's answer the question in terms of. So the first question says, how many people identify themselves as Northern Irish only in Fermanagh and Omagh? Northern Irish only. Fermanagh, as you can see, so we have Northern Irish only. That's 26,062 people. That is the answer to that. And it says what geographic referencing system was used. I mentioned that you could get this in your metadata information. If you're looking for that particular information, you could come here, geographic referencing system, as you can see, Irish National Grid. So that is how you can work with SICAN, explore its functionalities, and download data on that particular platform. As I said, if you have any further questions, you could ask after the session, and we'll gladly help you with that. Now let's go back to our slide. Now we've been able to cover activity 2.1 and exploring SICAN and Data Explorer. Now let's go to this. Placid mentioned this, that there's currently an issue with the gender identity data on the platform on SICK, and the issue was some responses to the sexual orientation questions that should have been coded to all other sexual orientation in the detailed classification were incorrectly coded to pansexual. So that particular data still has an issue, and we just wanted to note that particular issue if you are working with that particular data. So I'll move on to the next slide now. Now, deprivation data. So we could also use sensors and population data to calculate deprivation data, and it has different recipes like the Casters index, Townsend index of multiple deprivation. For example, the Casters index uses population data. For example, the Casters index is derived using indicators like lack of car ownership, low occupational social class, overcrowded housing, and male unemployment. And this is primarily used in Scotland. Another example is the Townsend index, which Townsend score rather, which uses unemployment in over 16s, non-car ownership, non-home ownership, and housing overcrowding. So these are all calculated or derived using sensors and population data. So if you are working with deprivation data, you could calculate all of this information using sensors and population data. And also the index of multiple deprivation can also be calculated, but the difference is that it shows relative levels of deprivation using data from multiple sources, not just sensors. So index of multiple deprivation is not only calculated using sensors, it also uses other types of data to derive that. So now we will go to our last slide, which is GeoConvert. And what is GeoConvert generally? GeoConvert is a tool that makes it easy to match UK postcode and census geographies and convert data between them. Now, I will show you the page, but we might not really go in depth into GeoConvert. But if you have questions after that, you can reach out to us. We would gladly help you with that. So I'll show you how you could access the platform and talk briefly about it, but we will not go in depth into that today. Now I'll go back to my browser. The same process. You could go to GeoConvert. Let's just go to UK Data Service GeoConvert. So you could also use the other method I showed you. I don't need to go through that again. So now this is the front page of GeoConvert. So let's click on Start GeoConvert, and these are the three options. So now we could calculate our index of multiple derivation using this particular platform. All you need to do is input your postcode, and you can calculate deprivation scores, grid reference coordinates. All of this can be calculated using GeoConvert. You can also match one geography to another. As you can see, these functions allows you to supply a set of zone identifiers for a specified geography and obtain information about geographical intersection of overlaps, as you can see. And also it can help to convert data from one geography to another. So if you have a data for a particular location, it can help you convert that data to another. So that is basically what GeoConvert does. As I mentioned earlier, we will not be exploring all the functionalities in GeoConvert today. If you have more questions around that, you could ask us after the session. And thank you very much for following through and going through the presentation with me. And I'll be handing over now to Eve for the continuation of the session. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. So I hope that you've all found this webinar useful so far. And if anything, it has shown you that the census has so many different things to offer and so much that can be learnt about it. I'm just going to bring us in a full circle back to the UK Data Service, and give you an overview of what we do and how you can access more support and learning relating to the census and other data use. And then we'll go over to questions. So, in a nutshell, what is the UK Data Service? The UK Data Service is a comprehensive resource funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. We aim to be a single point of access to a wide range of secondary social science data, as well as offering support, training, and guidance for individuals wanting to use such data. There is so much that the UK Data Service provides, from support with your learning to providing access to over 10,000 data collections. In terms of accessing this data, our data catalogue makes it really easy for you to use and browse to kind of access the data that you need. And I've just added a screenshot on the website of the website here where you can find that. In today's webinar, we've very much been focused on census data, but as well as this, the UK Data Service holds large-scale government-funded UK and cross-national surveys, major longitudinal UK surveys which follow the same individuals over time. We hold multi-nation aggregate data banks and survey data. We hold microdata and administrative data, and also a range of multimedia qualitative data sources. So we also offer support and guidance for all of these different types of data, which is free and easy to access. I think given the amount of different data available, sometimes it can feel overwhelming and it can be hard to know where to start with your research and using data. So it's important that you all know that support, training and guidance is available for you to help navigate this. The main bulk of our support resources can be found under the Learning Hub on the UK Data Service website, which Placide showed you briefly earlier. The image on the top right of the slide shows where you can access this. Within the Learning Hub, all resources are then broken down into categories so that you can easily navigate it. So the image on the bottom right shows some of these categories available, from student-specific support to census-specific support and resources. And within the Learning Hub, there are also guides, which show detailed kind of in-depth guides on how to use survey data using R, or we have introductory guides to SPSS and other major softwares. So these are also really useful for you to familiarise yourself with. On top of this, we also have lots of videos on our YouTube channel for the more visual learners. These include tutorials and recordings of webinars and workshops. For example, we have a whole playlist on using SPSS and workshop recordings, for example, mapping crime data in R. So again, I'd also recommend going and having a look at our YouTube channel. I don't need to go into this one too much as you've all joined today's webinar, but we also offer free webinars through our training and events. These are constantly being updated, and we also always look for feedback on what we can offer in the future, so please feed your thoughts in. Another really, really useful part of our training and support is our data skills modules. These are free interactive modules that are designed for anyone who wants to start using secondary data. You can follow the modules in your own time, and you get a certificate of completion at the end of each module. So some examples of these modules include an introduction to aggregate data, so similar to what we've been discussing today, or getting started with the Family Resources Survey. But there's lots more that can be found under surveys on the website. As well as offering support, training and guidance, we also tell stories of interesting data use and impact through the impact team, which is what I'm part of. We write both impact blogs and impact case studies, which share the stories of the UK Data Service data research and look into a lot of detail on the impact of this research. So I'd recommend, if you're interested in kind of what's going on with the data in the UK at the moment, of having a look at the data impact blog. And if you have any interesting stories about data, then please get in contact with us. We'll be answering questions shortly, so please keep putting them in the chat. But I think one final thing to note is that we have a help desk as well. So if you're unable to find information or support that you need on our website, you can directly contact our support services that will then help you with any issue that you may have. So this has hopefully made it very clear that, as well as providing access to so many different data collections, we also provide free access and a lot of support and resources. So various links have been added to the chat, but I really recommend looking through and familiarising yourself with the different support that's available, and always getting in touch if you have any questions. So we're going to move over to questions now, but thank you so much for listening today. And yeah, we hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you all for joining today, and please get in touch if you have any questions about anything today. And The slides and recording will be uploaded to our website and also to our YouTube. So thank you so much, everyone.